All right, so today's lecture is going to be covering coding from scratch week 1. So this is going to go over thinking like a programmer, HTML part 1 and part 2, and CSS part 1 and part 2. All right. So first, in order to begin coding, you want to start thinking like a programmer. And what that means is that you must be very good at precisely saying what we want the computer to do. If you think about it, a computer is just a machine. It can't do anything without a programmer. Computers themselves are dumb. They're not smart. They look like they're smart, but the thing is that it is because a programmer programs some software in order to make a computer do really cool things, and that's why we think computers are smart. But computers are not capable of understanding intent, adding context, or asking for clarification. So when you're talking to another human being, if they don't understand something, they'll ask for clarification, or they'll add some context to it, or they use context clues to understand what's going on and understanding the intent of something. So you don't have to be as precise to another person as you do to a computer. A computer, you have to tell it exactly what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. So if we were to make a bowl of cereal and we're talking to a computer, how would we do that? So first you have to say, okay, grab a bowl. Okay, where do I grab a bowl and what does grab mean? So something like put your arms in the air and place them on the side of the bowl and with force grab it and put it down on the counter. Open the cabinet and grab the cereal. Open the cereal, make a hole at the top, and then pour it at a 45-degree angle. Once the bowl has filled 3/4, go ahead and stop pouring and put it back in the cabinet. Open the fridge, pull out the milk from the second shelf, untwist the top. So you see where I'm getting at. So you have to be very specific, very precise, because if you perform the actions, like if you're talking to someone and you're pretending it's a computer and you don't specify what these things mean. So when I said grab and pour, there has to be predefined notions of what that actually means. What does grab mean? What does pour mean? It's like almost like a brand new baby, right? They don't know what words mean or the context of those words. You have to teach them, just like you have to teach a computer. So that will kind of get your gears going as far as what you need to do in order to program to find a solution to your problem. So 2 important questions you want to ask yourself when you're thinking like a programmer is, what do I have to work with and what steps are needed to accomplish my goals? So when you're given a problem, okay, let's see, what do I have to work with? Okay, this is the information that's given to me. These are the formulas I know. These are the calculations I know I need to do. And then what steps are needed to accomplish your goal? Okay, so I take this information and I know that I need to add them, or I need to add this here and keep track of this. So you need to write it out first before you even start coding. Before you start your first letter of code, you want to write this out to see what you're working with. I find it very helpful, and you'll find very experienced developers write it out by hand first in pseudocode. So a lot of times when you see developers, you'll see a giant whiteboard next to them. And with that, they kind of have pseudocode written out. Pseudocode essentially is fake code. It's like an outline of your program. So write it out by hand first, see what you have to work with, what steps you're needed to accomplish your goal, and then kind of outline it. After you're done outlining it, you'll kind of see, okay, this is how I have to write my code, and it will fall into place a lot more easier. So if you want the average of $1 bills in a wallet, so let's imagine that we have a wallet full of a bunch of bills, right? We got 20s, we got 5s, we got 50s, we have 1s, we have 10s, we have a bunch of bills in a wallet, right? Everyone's dream. So if I wanted to find the average of $1 bills in a wallet, what do I have to work with and what steps are needed to accomplish my goal? Does anyone want to help me figure this out? Okay, yep, so I have the $1 bill to work with, exactly. And what steps do I need to take in order to accomplish the goal? So first, before we go into steps, how do we find an average, right? It's asking for an average of something. So we know that we're working with an average. So what formula do we need in order to calculate an average? So let's say I had 10 fruit and 3 of them are oranges. What's the average oranges of total fruit? Of the total fruit, what's the average of oranges? Exactly. So you're going to add up all the $1 bills and divide the number by all the bills, right? So if we have fives, tens, 20s, ones, and we have a total, so first we need to calculate the total amount of bills, right? How many bills are in the wallet? Out of those bills, how many of those are $1 bills? So when we're talking code, we know that we need to consider it a loop, right? We're counting in a loop. So this is a 5, this is a 10, this is a 20, there's a 1. Every time we run into a 1, we need to keep track of that. So by the end of it, we know that out of 30 bills, 10 of them are $1 bills. So 1/3 is the average. Okay, and with that, we use a decision construct there. We're saying, okay, we grab a bill, but first we got to check if it's a $1 bill. Is it a $1 bill? Yes, let's update our counter. Is it not? Okay, we're updating the total counter, but not our counter for $1 bills. So you kind of get the idea. We worked it out first, and now when we're looking at code, we know that we need a loop, we need a couple counters, and we need an if statement in there to check to see if it is a $1 bill. So that's a prime example of how you want to break it up in human code, I like to call it pseudocode, before you actually go into the actual code. So now when we're attacking the code, we know we need a loop, we need if statement, and we need some counters. All right. Any questions on that before I move on to the next slide? Which screen? The screen before this one? Okay, 1 second. So thinking like a program, 2 important questions. What do I have to work with? What steps are needed to accomplish your goal? And this is all going to be recorded too. So in the same area where you clicked to join the lecture, after the lecture is done, I'll put the recording and you can watch it as well. All right, so let's go ahead and move on. So creating a project. So with a file path on a project, you're going to create a project folder, and in that folder, you're going to have the files that you need in order to do that project. So in this particular lecture, we're just going to deal with HTML and CSS files, but later on, you'll have JavaScript files, and later on after that, you'll have a bunch more files and a bunch more folders. But let's go ahead and create one. So I'm going to go to my desktop here, and I'm going to right click, and I'm going to say new folder, and I will do, oops, I want to rename my folder. Now I'm going to call it my example project. Okay, I've created my folder. Now I'm going to open my text editor, which we have Adam here, and I already have it open. So I'm going to close this, and then I'm going to File, Open, And then I'll go to my desktop, and we called it example project. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to do open. So here on the side, we see example project. This is our project folder, also referred to as the root directory. So whenever you hear root directory, we're just talking about the project folder. Now I'm going to go ahead and add some files to it. So I'm going to add an HTML file. So I'm going to right click, do new file, and then you're going to enter the file name. So I'll do index, and it's an HTML file, so we're going to do .html. So there we have our index.html file. I'm going to add another file that we're going to use later, and that's going to be a CSS file, and I'm going to call it style.css. Okay, so notice that the extension of the files are related to what language that they're going to be written in. So this is the HTML file, and this is a CSS file. Let's see what that looks like. I just showed you. So if you want to see it again, we have the project folder, and inside of the project folder are the files that you're going to need. Make sure that this is set up correctly. There are times where I've had students write in an index.html file that wasn't in their project folder, and they're making all these changes on the file, and they're not understanding why it's not making changes in their project. So this file pathway directory setup is very important to get your project working. Any questions on that so far? Atom is a text editor where you're going to be writing out your code. I believe for coding from scratch, you have in-browser text editors, but you're going to need Atom, so I would go ahead and download it. It's good practice to be working in a text editor. Any other questions? And you guys, you can unmute yourself and just ask. You don't have to type it. All right, we'll keep it moving then. So let's go ahead and jump into HTML. So what is HTML? HTML is a markup language that is used to have more than just text sitting on a page. So when we think HTML, we can have images, links, tables, lists, headings, sections, articles. That's everything that we see on the actual website. So if we go to any website, let's see, let me open a website here. Let's say we go to target.com. Yeah, I'm going to bring this over here so you guys can see. So here we have target.com, right? This is what we normally see when we go to a website. It's all nice and pretty. If we click view page source, we can see the HTML of the, well, there's some JavaScript in here, but you can see that there's HTML here, right? So that is what's marking up the website. That's where it's putting the images, it's putting the headings, it's putting this navigation, it's putting this drop-down menu, it's doing all of that. That's HTML. It's the very bare bones of a website. When it starts getting pretty, when we get this red font, and when we get this background color and these background colors and this button and this hovering, that's where CSS comes in. So HTML is the bare bones of any site. So with HTML, there are tags and elements. So tags are a specialized series of characters that a browser interprets as either the start or end of an HTML element. So if we're looking here at this example here, this is a P tag. Okay, the tag part is the red stuff. So where you see these little arrows or carrots, whatever you'd like to call them. The one that looks like this without the forward slash is the beginning. So this is saying this is the start of the P tag, and then the one with the forward slash is the end. So this is the start, this is the end. So those are your tags. Elements are HTML components that contain the start and end tag. Think of them as a whole object. So a P, this is the element, right? Paragraph element. So this whole thing is going to be your element. So including, this is a sentence that will appear. This is the entire P element, and this is the tags. Okay, so this is going to be the format of all your HTML elements and tags. You're going to have a beginning and an end. There are a few exceptions to the rule where some of them have self-closing tags, which essentially means that they do not require this closing tag right here. And we'll go over which ones those are. But this is the basic of every HTML tag and element. So with that, the HTML has a document structure, which is comprised of a few different elements. We have doc type, HTML, head, and body. Doc type specifies which version of HTML is being used. HTML element denotes the start of the HTML document. It contains everything. So everything that you see on the site is inside of the HTML element, all of this. The head element contains metadata, and that's data that's not displayed on the site. So this is where you can have meta tags for search engine optimization. The head also contains links to other files. So when we're linking our CSS file to our HTML element, we're going to do that in the head. Also includes the title. So the title of the document is put right here. So anything in between the title tag is what you're going to see here in the tab. Lastly, we have the body element, which is content displayed in the browser. So that's everything that you're seeing. So all of this that you're seeing here is not only in the HTML element, but it is in the body element as well. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like. So we are going to, is it always going to stay the same? Chantel, could you be more specific in what you're referring to? The document structure, is that what you're asking?
Hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. So when you put the P in front and then there's a P at the end and the backslash and everything, is that always going to be the same, or are the letters going to change? Is the
so that's just a paragraph element. So the structure of it, the red part, is not going to change. These little arrows are always going to be the same.
But the letter might change.
The P is going to change, yes,
Gotcha.
depending on the type of element. And we'll go over the different types of elements so you can see examples. So right now we're going to see the elements that are in the document structure. So here, if we go back to our code, and the cool thing about Atom, you can type in HTML, then hit tab, and it does the entire structure for you. So if we look at it, we said that there was doc type, right? It's telling you what type of document this is. This is the HTML document. And then underneath that, we have our HTML, which is where we write everything. So we have the beginning tag here and then the closing tag here. Within that, you have your head and your body. The head goes on top, so you can think of like a human being. My head is on top of my body. So we have our head, opening, closing, and then within that, we said we had the meta and the title and a link, right? So this is where we can put links. We're going to add to the link later when we get into CSS, but for now, I'm just going to leave it here. Link is a special tag in the sense that it does not have a closing tag. So normally we do this, right? Opening and closing, but link is self-closing, which means it does not need that. So with the meta tag here, we have charset UTF-8. That's just saying what type of keyboard we're working with. And we have title, which is where we saw this. So here, where it says target, expect more, pay less, whoever wrote the code would have done target, expect more, pay less. And that's where they would have written here. Right now, I'm just going to write my page. And then that's the head. With the head, there is only one head per HTML document. So there are not multiple head elements. Same goes for HTML, doc type, and body. The body is where you're going to be basically living in. This is where you're going to write the majority of your code. You're going to write a link and a title, but the majority, the meat of your website is going to be within the body. So this is where the majority of your code will be. And you notice what I wrote here, these 2 /, actually, that is JavaScript. So to comment something out in HTML, it is this caret with an exclamation mark and 2 dashes. And then to end the comment, it is 2 dashes and a /. What this is basically notes for yourself. So if you're sharing code with someone else, or you need to write a note so you can remember when you come back to it later what's going on here or what this code means, that's what you can do. You can also highlight it and hit or Control / if you're on Windows, Command / if you're on a Mac, and that will change it from comment to not comment. Okay. So this is the structure of every HTML page that you'll ever write. So if let's say your site has multiple pages. So let's go here and let's say I go to deals and I want to see the weekly ad. That's going to take me to another page, which means there's another HTML file that exists out there that has this, right? And so on and so forth. With that, you then have structure elements. So structure elements are all going to go inside of the body. So I'll write a little note here. Structured elements go here. And if you want the code after the lecture, just send me a message on Slack and I can definitely send it to you. So structured elements are going to go there. So with that, there are different types of structured elements. We have div, section, header, nav, and footer. The div is used to create a generic container for content. Section provides a structure around a block of content, grouping in a logical format. So div and section kind of do the same thing, except section is more logical. So if you have different sections of your page, let's say you're making a portfolio page and you have about me, background, contact me type sections, it's kind of like the same as div, but it's more logical. Then we have our header, which is new to HTML5, and essentially, the code. There we go. Then we have header, which is used to mark the header part of the body. It's 1 per document. So just like head, it's not the same as head. Header is visible to the browser, and it's inside of the body tags, but there's only 1 of them per document. Nav usually is inside of the header, so it's nested inside of the header, and it's used to mark up the navigation area. So when we're looking at a website here, if we go back to the main site, we see up here we can navigate to different parts of the site. That is the navigation. And we also have the footer, which is the counterpart to the header, and it outlines the footer content in the document. So this is normally where you see like social media, here where it says terms of agreement, privacy rights. So for target.com, this is the footer. And up here would be the header. Right? So let's go ahead and add some structure elements to our page. So if we go back to our code over here, let's go ahead and add some things. So I'm going to add a header, open, close, okay? And then inside of that, I'm gonna have my navigation, opening and close, okay? Then after my header, I'm gonna go ahead and have 3 sections. So we'll have a section here. We're just going to copy and paste that. I have 3 sections. In my sections, I will have divs, Now, this isn't how it has to be done. This is just an example of how to do it. All right, so I have 3 sections with some divs, and then let's go ahead and add a footer. And notice that all of this that I'm writing is still within the body tags, okay? So with the sections, I'm going to have some titles here. So let's say Meet Sandra, a little bit of history, and then let's go ahead and say she has mad skills, right? That'll be my skills section. All right, so we have our structured elements inside of our document. Now, if we go and see what that looks like, we're not going to see much because we don't have anything inside of these elements. These are just marking it up. What we actually see is the gray stuff that we write in between the tags. So if we look at this, we should see my page on the tab, and then we should see 3 lines. Meet Cassandra, a little bit of history, and she has mad skills. So if we save that, go back to our desktop, and we go to example project. I'm going to open this up, and then with index.html, I'm going to right click, and then I'm going to say open with Google Chrome. I'm going to move it over here. So here, just as I expected, we have my page, Meet Cassandra, a little bit of history, and she has mad skills. Okay, so those are structured elements. Are there any questions about structured elements so far? All right, we'll keep it moving then. Element attributes. So we've seen a few elements so far. Some of these have attributes. So attributes communicate specific functionality about a tag. So there's 2 uses for them. Either used to change, modify a tag's functionality, or they're used to add functionality that isn't automatically associated with that tag. So examples of tags with attributes. We have image tag, anchor tag, input tag, and button tag. So with those, the image has a source attribute. That's saying the source of the image. So you can either put a relative pathway or you can put an absolute pathway. Absolute means that it exists online. So like www.google.com / blah, blah, blah. Or you can do relative. Like, so if we're looking at our code here, let's pretend I had an image in this folder, I would just put the pathway to that image. And I'll show you an example of both, excuse me. Anchor tag has a attribute of href, which is similar to the source tag. It's saying where it is, where are we linking to? This is where you use to link something to something. So if we're looking here and I click on this, right? I hover and it's clickable. We used an anchor tag, okay? If I clicked on this, I can click it. It used an anchor tag. I clicked on this. It used an anchor tag. So anything that you can click on is using an anchor tag. I click on this image. It took me somewhere else. That's another anchor tag. Anchor tags also have the target attribute, which is what you can do if you want to open it in a separate tab. So let's say you have something that you can click on your site and you want that to open in another tab. You don't want it to redirect. So if we notice here, as I'm clicking things, it's redirecting. Okay? It's not opening in a separate tab. Target, oops, you can put _ blank, and that's what's going to put it in a separate tag. But I'll go ahead and show you that once we get back to the code. Input, so when you're filling out forms, you know, where it says name, where you're registering for something, you have first name, last name, email, message, things like that. Sometimes in those inputs, you'll see something that says like, example, johndoe@gmail.com. It's using a placeholder. So you set your placeholder equal to something inside of quotes, and that's what's going to appear. Button has on-click attribute, which is an example of adding functionality that isn't automatically associated with that tag. So on-click is where you can click on a button, and on that click, it will trigger a JavaScript function. So you set that equal to the name of your JavaScript function, so that when you click on it, it jumps to your JavaScript file and looks for that function name, and then it performs that function, which you don't have to worry about now. That's next week. But just so you know that you're aware of that. All right, so let's go ahead and add some elements with attributes. So let's go back to our code here, and I'm going to insert an image here. So I'm going to use my image tag. An image is a special one because it's self-closing, just like the link tag, so we don't need to put a closing tag for image. So in there we have the attribute source, right? And we're going to set it equal to something. I'm going to show you how to do it with using an absolute URL and a relative URL. So if we save that, and let's say I go to my GitHub account, and I take this image, I'm going to right click, and I'm going to copy image address. I'm going to put that there. I have my image address. Or another thing I can do is I can save the image. Okay, so I'm going to save the image as me. I'm going to put it on my desktop. And then here, I'm going to take this image and I'm going to put it in my root directory because everything needs to be in there. So I put it in there, and we go back to our code. We can see that image is here, right? So now inside of the source, I can just put the pathway. So it automatically knows to check your directory. So you don't have to put example project /me.jpg. It already knows that we're in this folder, so you just have to put me.jpg. Now, if you had another folder within this folder, let's say it's called images, and you had this image inside of that folder, then you want to do images /me.jpg. But that folder doesn't exist, so we're going to go ahead and take that out. So now I'm going to save that, and if I go back to, where did I have it? Here. And I reload, we see we have the two images. Now note we use different code, but it's pulling up the same results. So those are the different things that you can do with image. And now let's go ahead and add some anchor tags. So in the navigation, let's pretend we have a couple of different other files. Let's say we have, let's go and add a portfolio.html, and let's say we had a contact.html. Okay, then I'm going to have just something in there that says this is the portfolio page, just so you can see. And then we have, this is the contact page. Save that. So now in my navigation, I can navigate to these other pages, right? So we're going to use anchor tags because we want things to be clickable. So with an anchor tag, we have href equals something, and then this one does have a closing tag. So we're going to write that a few times. The first link I want to take to the home page, which is going to be .index.html. So remember, href is similar to source. So we're going to go ahead and put the name of our file, and then I'm going to say about me here. And this is the text that's going to appear on the page and then be clickable to take me here. Then we have portfolio.html. Sure I spelled that right. And I'll say, check out my work. And then here we'll do contact.html, and then inside that I'll say contact me. Okay. So if we save that and go back to our page, we see this here, right? So now I can go check out my work, contact me. Now, if you notice, when I go to these other pages, I don't have a way of going back to the original page. I have to hit the back button. And, you know, with multiple clicks here, there, and everywhere, it'll take a lot of back buttons to go back to the original page. So you want to make sure that if you have multiple pages on your site, that you have a navigation for all of it. So I'm just going to copy and paste the navigation so that I can navigate back and forth between pages. So if we save that and refresh, now that I go to check out my work, I can jump around and go to the different pages. Also with anchor tags, you can put absolute URLs, just like we did here. So in my footer, let's say I had some anchor tags, right? But I want it to open in a separate tag. So I'm going to use target, right? Underscore blank. This is saying it is going to open in a separate tab. So I'm going to copy and paste this a couple times. And let's say I want it to go to my LinkedIn. And I want it to go to my GitHub. So with my GitHub, let's get the URL for that. I'm just going to copy and paste this in my href, and then I'll do the same thing for LinkedIn. Move this over here. Just going to copy that and then put it in here, and we'll save. And now when I go back to my page, you see that it opened in a separate tab. Okay, so we have our anchor tags. Any questions on this so far? Go back. So yeah, Chantal, you're right. This is like learning a new language, a new foreign language, computer language. It's going to take some time to get used to. I know that I'm moving pretty quickly because we don't have much time. But practice makes perfect. So just keep working at it and, you know, review the lessons and it will come second nature to you. But let's go ahead and keep it moving here. Semantic elements. So semantic elements are going to be your heading tags, your italicized, bold, ordered lists, unordered lists. So heading tags go in order of importance. So 1 through 6, 1 being the most important, 6 being the least important. Italicized, EM versus I. EM is treated as important. That's more visible to like a visually impaired site. So italicized, like for us, it looks the same, right? It's just going to be italicized text, but EM is going to be treated as important content. Bold, you're going to use strong. Ordered lists, you have ordered lists and unordered lists are the same format. The difference between the two is ordered list is going to be numbered. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Unordered list is going to be bullet points. So you're just going to see little bullets. Within the opening and closing tag of ordered and unordered list, you're going to have your list items. And those are the things that are next to the numbers or the bullets. So if I put skills like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, it's going to be like 1, HTML, 2, CSS, 3, JavaScript. So let's go ahead and add some semantic elements so you can see what that looks like. So here I'm going to make these all H1 tags. Oops. So another cool thing about Atom is if you hit Option, Command, and click, you see I have two blinking cursors. I can write the same thing, and it does it for me. Okay, so there I have some headings. Let's go ahead and add some paragraphs in there. So let's say I'm going to do the same thing here. Hold on. Some space here. So here, here, and here, I'm going to add some paragraph tags. And then I'm just going to steal some dummy text. So you can go to Lorem Ipsum. It's like Latin. It's very commonly used for dummy text. There's also different versions of this, like Hipster Ipsum, Bacon Ipsum. They're a little bit sillier. So let's go ahead, steal this text, and then I'm just going to put it there. And then I'm going to click View and then Soft Wrap. That way I can see everything on one screen and I don't have to scroll sideways. So we have some paragraph text there, and then let's see, what else do we want to add? Let's add some ordered lists. All right, so under my math skills, let's make this paragraph a little bit smaller here. Let's just do a couple sentences. And then underneath that, I'm going to go ahead and have an ordered list. So I have my opening and closing. And then within that, I have my list item. And I'll say HTML, CSS, and then I'll say JavaScript. And if we save all of that, let's go ahead and see what this all looks like. So now when I refresh, we see we have more content on the page. If we look at the ordered list, we see that it's numbered. We see that H1 tags and the paragraph tags, the difference between the two here. If we wanted an unordered list, it would be the exact same format, except of OL, it'd be UL. So if we change that to U, we save that. Oops. We see that that changed to bullet points. Okay. All right, so those are semantic elements. There any questions on semantic elements? All right, we'll keep it moving then. So next we'll go ahead and discuss tables and forms. Tables are similar to an Excel spreadsheet. So just like you see any Excel spreadsheet, you have your rows and your columns. Forms are a valuable way to gather information. That's where you're like inputting text into a form, like an email form or a contact me form or a registration form. That's the way to gather information. So let's go ahead and add a table and a form to our page. So if we add a table, let's go under a little bit of history. I want to add a table. We're going to use the table tag. So with the table, I have my open and closing. Inside of the table tag, we have two. We have T head, which is going to be where we put our headings. And then we'll have our T body. So T head is our heading. So let's say that we did a row. We're going to have a row here. So TR stands for row. And then TD is going to be what's inside of that row. So let's say the headings I want to do is school. And then let's just say location. So if we go ahead and save that and see what that looks like. we see we have these two things here. Now, we can put some contents in there. So I'm going to add a row. I'm just going to have 2 rows. So I'm just going to set myself up right now for the 2 rows. And I like to set myself up first. That way I don't forget to put closing tags. And then inside of there, I'll do TD, have 2 of those because we have 2 columns. TD is going to determine the amount of columns you have. So we'll do 2 of those. And then I'll put UT Austin, that's in Texas. And then I'll say Coder Camps, and that's in Arizona. Okay, so if we save that, we can see that that was added. Okay, so that's going to be your table. That's how you can insert tables into your HTML. Now, if we wanted to add a form, we can do that on our contact page. Let's say we have, well, first we need our form tag. And then with the form, we have our input. Believe input self-closing. Let me just double check. And I've been coding for years. I always still have to double check for certain tags to make sure that I am writing it correctly here. So a great site that I like to use is W3 Schools. And you can see here for how to write it out. So if you ever forget, you can always go here. So let's say I'm looking for HTML forms. Okay, that's not what I wanted. So if we look at tables like we just did here, you can see an example of what that looks like, which is what I just did. So with forms, it is, I'm just going to go off memory because I can't find it. Input, and then you can have a placeholder, right? Then you can say, enter your name. And then with that, you can have a label. And you could say name. And then you want to close your label. Yeah, I don't think input has a closing. So if we save that, I'm going to make that form small for the essence of time. I go to my contact me. We see I have my form here. And you see when there's no text in there, it says enter your name. There's a placeholder. Okay. So we'll go ahead and jump into CSS. We don't have much time left, so if I'm going to power through this, but if you have any questions, please feel free to message me on Slack or set up a meeting with your dedicated mentor. So let's go ahead and jump into CSS. What is CSS? CSS is a cascading style sheet. It was developed as a way to style the HTML and create reusable style, also called rules. These styles or rules can be added directly to an HTML file by using the style element. They can also be added to a separate CSS file and then linked to the HTML file. I'm going to teach you on how to do it on a separate file and then linking it to your HTML file because that's just good practice. So I want you to get used to doing that. CSS is called cascading because the styles from a parent element also apply to its descendants. So the style cascade down to the element tree from the parent element. So what that means is if I add, we look here, if I add styling to the body, it's going to affect everything inside of the body tag. So if we notice, a majority of everything we wrote is within our body tag. So before we start adding styles to it, we're going to need to link our CSS file to our HTML file. So the way that we do that is with our link tag inside of our head tag. Link tags has two attributes. So you could do rel, which stands for relation, and then it is related by a style sheet. So a CSS relation with HTML file is going to be, it's a style sheet. We also have href, which we've seen before with the anchor tag, and we're just going to tell it the file pathway, which is style.css, since it's directly in our root directory. I'm going to go ahead and save that, and now, oops, now if I added something here, we can see it change. We see the whole background is blue now. So linking a CSS file, I just showed you how to do that. The type attribute can be used. It's not necessary, but it's essentially, it's saying it's a CSS file. The relation is it's a style sheet, and it is located at style.css. So CSS syntax, you're going to have your selector and then some curly brackets. Inside of the curly brackets, you'll have your properties, a colon, and then the value followed by a semicolon. So you can have 1 property, 2 properties, 40 properties, however many properties you need. So if we look at the code that I just wrote, body is going to be my selector, background color is my property, and blue is my value. And I can add a bunch of things. So if I wanted to change the font color, I'll do white. Or if I wanted to, let's see, let's just leave it at that. We go back here, everything turns white. Okay. Basic properties that you'll be dealing with is color, so that changes the font color. Background color changes the background, as we saw. Font family is the font style of it, so that's like sans serif, Comic Sans, things like that. We have font weight, which is going to be the thickness of the font, and border style. So let's say you wanted to add a border style is going to be like dash, dotted, solid line. Those are your basic properties that you'll be dealing with. So let's go ahead and add some properties here. So I added background color and color. Let's see. Then I'm going to, let's see. Let's add a border to my table. So table is going to have a border style of, let's say, solid. Actually, let's do dashed. Okay. And let's say I want my H1s to have a different color. Let's say yellow. So we see the font color of my H1s have turned yellow. We have a dash border around my table, and we have the background color and color of the font. If you notice, the H1 was replaced. Like normally this was white, right, when we had it in the body. But now CSS is very specific. So we're saying, okay, everything in the body is white, but then we say, but H1 specifically is going to be yellow. So that's why it is yellow here. Okay. CSS also, the selectors can, so that was like HTML element, but we can also use classes and IDs. So classes is going to use the dot syntax. IDs is going to use the hashtag or pound, whatever you want to call it. Syntax. Classes are reusable. So let's say that you wanted to reuse a certain style font, color, and background color in different areas. You'll just reuse those classes in those different areas. IDs are unique. There's only one of them. So if you have an ID called banana, there's only one ID called banana. There are not multiple IDs called banana. So let's go ahead and add some. So let's say I wanted to create a class that made the font color red. Okay, so I'm going to call the class red. So I'm going to do dot red, and then I'll do color red. Okay, then I'm just going to add that to certain parts. Where you add your classes and IDs is going to be in the opening tag of the element that you're using. So let's say I want to make this class red. So you'll do class equals quotations, and then inside of the quotations, the name of the class. Let's say this is class red 2. Right? And we save that. Go back. We have red. Right? So that's reusable. IDs is going to have the exact same format. So let's say this has an ID called meat. ID meat. So if we notice, it's the same format, right? But in our CSS, instead of a period, it's going to be a pound meat. And then let's say I'll do color black. Go back here. We see that it turned black. Now IDs are unique, so there's only one of those. Any questions on classes or IDs? I know I'm moving pretty quickly here. All right, we'll keep it moving then. So other properties that you'll be dealing with is the display property. Display has a couple of values that it can equal: block, inline, and none. So block makes the element a block and won't let anything sit next to it on a page. Inline makes the element sit on the same line as another element, but without formatting it like a block. And none makes everything disappear. So if we add that here to our images so you can see the differences, let's go back to our code, and we're going to, our selector is going to be the image element. So it's IMG. Then I'm going to say display block. Okay. So block doesn't let anything sit next to it on the row, right? So images are on top of each other. If we say inline, let me just close this real quick so we don't need this anymore. If we say inline, we say that they're right next to each other. Now, if we do none, it's going to disappear, right? Nope, let me save it. Now it's gone, right? So those are the differences there on the display property. So I'm going to put it back to inline. And then we'll go ahead and jump to the CSS box model. Now, this is something that you want to have memorized or printed out or a cheat sheet because it will help you with styling your CSS. A lot of the times in CSS, you'll be working with it and it doesn't do what you want it to do. And it's over here when you want it to be over here, and you don't know why there's so much space between this thing and that thing. It's because it's the box model. So you always want to keep this in mind. So the content area is the element. So let's pretend we're dealing with the image, right? So this is the content area. The content area, you can adjust the height and the width of that. Right? So I can adjust the height and width of the image. So if I wanted to make the width 100%, or if I wanted to do like 80 pixels, right? Go back here, we can see that they're smaller. You can adjust the height as well. Outside of that, you have your padding. Now you can adjust the top, right, bottom, left separately, or if you put padding, it will just do it for all of them. It will make them all equal amounts. Same thing goes for border and margin. So remember, you have height, width, then padding, then the border, then the margin. So if you're messing around with the margin, border, padding, width, or height, and you're not understanding why it's not going in the place that you want it to, just check these properties and make sure that they are what they need to be. And one cool thing to do is in Chrome, you can right click and hit inspect. And then here you can see your code, right? So, and here you can see the styling. So one cool thing you can do is, let's say I wanted to, so we see this box with the arrow, I'm clicking on that and I'm clicking on this image. Here it's saying what styles are associated with that image. So we see we have display and width, which is what we wrote, and then we have inherited from body. So this is telling us, okay, this is what's inherited from the body selector that we use. So here we can change things. So if I didn't want it to be inline anymore, I can do block, right? And I can see immediately the changes. Right? If I wanted to adjust the width to 200 pixels, it changes. If I want to do 20 pixels, it changes. So this isn't going to make changes to your file, but it's a good tool to use instead of writing something in your code, saving it, and then refreshing. And then like, oh, that didn't work. Writing something, saving it, refreshing. Oh, that didn't work. You can mess around with it in your dev tools on Google Chrome and see what does work so that when it is time to go back to your code, you can just copy and paste it and you know that's going to turn out the results that you want. This here is going to be your best friend. Okay, you want to get familiar with your dev tools on Chrome. You're going to use this a lot when you're debugging. Here it also shows the box model here. So this is what we're looking at. This is your box model for this item. You can click on different elements too, and you can see what's going on, right? It has it written out for you. It tells you the margins, things like that. You'll use the console once you get to JavaScript, but we'll ignore that for now. We're just dealing with elements and styles. All right. So that wraps up my lecture for today. I do appreciate you guys coming in. If you have any questions, please feel free to Slack me at cassandra.matos or email me at cassandra.matos-mendez@codercamps.com. I will be posting the recording of this lecture afterwards once it starts, reformatting to the proper format. So by the end of the day, it will be under the announcement section where you clicked in to join the lecture. But I do appreciate you coming. Are there any questions so far? All right. So if you do have questions later on, feel free to message me or ask your mentor or send me an email. I do appreciate you coming. Thank you and have a great day.